But thank you so much. Recording in progress. Yeah, I've just been told. Okay, let me start again. Since we haven't gone far, I'm so happy someone did mention. Let me share the screen again. Okay. Share the sound. Okay. Welcome once again. I don't know why WhatsApp doesn't. Once again to our discussion today, copper value addition presentation. Today we are exploring the copper wire distribution and production presented by our brother, Mr. Foston Sinyiza. Mr. Sinyiza is an experienced metallurgist, actually. So he knows how to melt copper. He has something to say about that. So our agenda for today as phase one. We'll talk about phase one. What does it mean to become a copper wire distributor? And then phase two, transitioning into copper wire production. Question and answer session. And that will wrap up our discussion today. So we are hoping to have a nice discussion, a nice and short, and I hope we can have something going on this year. To start our discussion, I have a small video I want to play on how people, I never thought it was this easy, how to put plastic on a copper wire. And this is something probably we'll venture into as we go on. Please have a look, and then from there, Mr. Sinyiza will take over. Okay. I hope that motivated you, and as we go into this, we know what we are talking about. Thank you very much. Wasiniza, over to you. From phase one, becoming a copper wire components distributor, understanding the copper wire market. Talk to us first and foremost about the demand in the local, in the region, and global on the as you become a copper wire distributor. Go ahead.
Good evening, Global Cooperative members, and thank you very much, Mr. Charlie, for having me and inviting me to discuss some of the pertinent issues regarding the desire for people to invest into the value addition to the copper as a metal. Briefly, I would like to introduce myself very briefly. I won't take too long. And I believe I'm loud and clear, Mr. Charlie.
Very, very loud and clear.
Thank you. So briefly, I'm a metallurgical engineer by profession who has spent over 30 years in the cable manufacturing industry within Zambia, and also had an opportunity to globetrot, within Africa, in the Far East, Europe. All this was in pursuit of marketing and selling the copper products. When I worked for a cable manufacturing company called Zamefa here in Zambia, it's located on the copper belt in Luansha, where I started as a process engineer, then rose through the ranks to the position of technical and the development manager. I am a registered practicing engineer with the Engineering Institution of Zambia, for which I'm also a fellow. So, having said that, let's look at phase one, becoming a copper wire components distributor. As you saw in the clip, the brief clip that Mr. Chola showed us, we saw a process that was set up to run building wire, what we call building wire, and this was color red. But towards the end, we saw black being packed, ready for sale, okay, or ready for marketing if you want. So in short, when you run building wire, for those that have an electrical background, it is mainly used in buildings, construction if you want. Of course, basically you have what is called a live and neutral. So you use, depending on the arrangement, you can use the black as the neutral, the red as the live phase, or if you interchange colors, like if you need to have earthing, you will have another core inserted, which will normally be green if we go by the British specifications for house wire. And if you look at the plug, for those of you that have 3-pin plugs, you find that the earthing is normally green, or it's green-yellow. And the phase is normally brown. The neutral is normally blue, or whichever color codings that obtain in a particular market. Now, for those other electrical components where you have 2-pin plugs, you only have 2 cables in there, and the fuse, which is incorporated in the equipment. So in case you have power surges, it's the fuse that will blow up, so you don't damage your equipment. Now, coming to the demand for copper products, I think it's the in thing. In fact, in some parts of the world, they are trying to put copper as one of the metals that is endangered, and that it should be controlled. Because those that have got copper, it's being used in electric vehicles, it's being used in phones, it's being used almost in all electronic gadgets as a metal on its own or as an alloy. So it is used in combination with other metals. I can briefly talk about brasses and bronzes, because for brass, you add the zinc, you add the lead. For bronze, you add the tin, okay, and a bit of phosphorus if you want. So the market within the region is fairly big within the region. I'm talking about Zambia and its neighboring countries. When I talk of neighboring countries, I may break it down to regions. You have the Eastern region, okay? Some countries in the Eastern Africa market belong to COMESA as well. So the Zambian copper, by virtue of its high quality, finds its way in these markets. COMESA market, including South Africa. The East African market We are talking about Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, and of late, there are some products that have found their way in Ethiopia. Ethiopia has a huge market for building wire. Okay? And like I said, the key industries are construction and electrical and telecommunications. In electrical, this is where I'm putting the electric cars, car batteries. In telecoms, the phones. Yeah. In terms of the competitors' landscape, you know, it's a very lucrative market. So competition is stiff. However, if one chooses to go into a niche market where you target selected products, just a few products for a start, then you find that you are able to compete favorably even with the big boys. Because the big boys will have huge companies, and as such, their overhead costs are very high. But if you go in targeting a niche market, your overheads will be literally negligible. Now, this is specifically to do with building wire. And in building wire, we can target sizes going from 1.5 millimeter squared to about 35 millimeter squared in the interim. Now, if people have questions with what I'm explaining or they are left behind, don't feel neglected, but just jot down your questions. We can pick them up at the end of the session. Currently, when it comes to distributors, currently in Zambia, the major distributors are, for instance, Zamefa, based in Wansha, a company for which I worked. We have another new company that has come up in Ndola. It's called Neocant. We have some other small companies that have come up in Lusaka and also in the Chibombo area, just after Kabwe. Or if you are coming from Lusaka towards Kabwe, you get to a place called Chibombo. There are some few suppliers that are making building wire. Now, talking about competition and the lucrative market to do with copper products, you find that our market is equally saturated with products coming out of South Africa, coming out of China, coming out of India. However, one of the critical, or rather two critical components to this that I would name, before going far into the discussion are: one, quality, and two, the ability to deliver on time. So if the client wants the product, they want it at that particular time because the product is needed for a specific project, which cannot be delayed. So the product should be of very high quality, and secondly, they must be delivered in the agreed timelines. I hope that is clear. Those two are very critical. Now, building on those two, it means that you cannot drop the ball in as far as the quality assurance is concerned. So the quality assurance starts from the specifications. Okay? The specification of the product itself, and then this is cascaded down to the specifications of the various components, the raw materials, and how you approve the raw materials, the product, and how you approve the finished product. It also incorporates ensuring that your operatives or your human resource is fairly competent. There is what we call operator controllability. Now, operator controllability is premised on three things. The person called an operator should have access to precise and correct documentation before they can make any product. They must have access to precise and documented instructions before they can manufacture a product. Secondly, they must have access to measuring tools. They should be able to measure their product because they are the first port of call in as far as quality assurance is concerned. Thirdly, they must have ability to be able to tell if something is a good product or if something is non-conforming. Not now, please. Yeah, I'll get back to you. I'm in a meeting right now. And so, these are critical issues when it comes to identifying the critical suppliers. Now, navigating the regulations, these will be mainly government regulations. Before you can set up any entity, you've got to have it registered with PACRA, you've got to take it through ZRA, they will give the guidance. ZRA comes in because you have to pay certain taxes, you know, depending on what volumes you are involved in, how much money you are making, and the like. Currently, in Zambia, you are subject to pay tax of 4 to 5% on any businesses earning less than 5 million kwachas. Okay? Anything above that, of course, attracts other taxes. But one of the other major regulations is that cable products have to be approved by what used to be called the Zambia Bureau of Standards. They are approving all electrical cables. They approve them for safety and just the completeness of the product, and that it will be suitable to be used in the Zambian market without harming the users. Those are some of the critical things for now that I can talk about. Now, considering logistics, how does this come about? You know, maybe before you can migrate to what is put in phase 2, phase 1 is critical because as you source funding, as you try to, you know, find your feet, maybe the best way would be to somehow find some premises, put up a warehouse where you can work or rather become a distributor of the electric cables made in copper. Of course, the other products may creep in once in a while because, you know, those that use cable would want accessories that make their work easier. So you find that before you can start to stock all the items needed for construction, you may target a niche of products. This is why I would recommend, just in the initial phases, to try warehousing, where you can buy quality products from any of these manufacturers of these products. Of course, there are risks there. Just to mention one quick one. Suppose the supplier of your product finds that you are becoming a very stiff competitor, then they may start to think of wanting to phase you out or assimilate you. Okay? But the downside also is that they may find you a potential co-partner. Okay? Because in building wire, as you saw, those coils that they are making are packed in 100-meter lengths, 100 meters of black or red or green, whichever is the case. So you can imagine you can load a pallet of, say, 100, 200, 500 coils on one pallet. Okay? So when it comes to distribution, it means that you either have a pallet of 500 coils of red and another pallet of 500 coils of black. So when you sell, you are selling red and black so that the electricians are able to wire their properties without a problem. I hope that is clear. Now, of course, warehousing comes with its own challenges. Like, the facility should be secure. Copper is very attractive. It's prone to theft and all kinds of things. So security becomes of paramount nature when you go into warehousing. So security within and security from outsiders. Within, why within? Your own employees can pilfer. And so it's important that within the strategy of putting up this, you incorporate that aspect. Okay? Thefts from within and thefts from without. Okay? Now, financial considerations. Capital requirements. This would depend on what is being put on the table, what the group can raise. Of course, depending on where the cost of money is fairly on the lower side and it's accessible, where the offers are attractive, if people can go for it. That's why life is full of risks. So, like I said, it's important to start in a small way. You go from 1.5 to 2.5, okay? From there, you start to bring in flexible cables, 1.5 by 3 core, 2.5 by 3 core, okay? You go to 4 by 3 core, okay? You go to 6, 3 by 6 or 6 by 3, progressively like that, until you go to 35 as single cores. Now, that will depend on the type of equipment that you are using, because to run the bigger cores, you don't need that extruder, which Mr. Charlie showed in that clip. Of course, technology has moved, all those things that you saw there, some of them have been phased out or they've been upgraded just to make the process a lot more efficient, okay, and safer for the product. Because I could see flames here, there. It means that your operatives may be subject to fires and the like. Of late, it's important that when you are running a factory like that, you must not only adhere to very high quality standards, but you must equally adhere to very high safety standards. Equally, the environmental standards, because everybody wants to go green these days. So those components must be brought on board. But those are for the future. Okay? What are the margins like? I'm talking about a product that attracts very high volumes. So the margins may be on the lower side, but at the end of the day, you make your money. So the margins can range from about, in some markets, 3 to 5%. In some other markets, they can go from 5 to 10%. Now, the catch here is volume. The margins may be low, but because of the volumes that you channel, you make your money. I hope that one is clear. And the beauty is the market may not be customized only to Zambia. We are talking about a region. Zamefa is able to put products in the region, and it's able to do it very competitively. Okay, regardless of the margins I've mentioned, because the other driver in terms of margins are the external players. You know, those that are importing products from outside Zambia, like the Chinese products. Okay, the quality of the product may not, you know, it is questionable. I can put it in inverted commas. It's questionable because I've gone to the market, I've bought Chinese products and I tested them. You know, the Chinese sometimes even take steel wire, which they coat with copper. And you know, if you are unsuspecting, you buy the product, you wire your facility, and you start the cable. You find that the cables are heating up because the resistance is too high. You know, you are using incorrect copper. So those are some of the things to consider when we look at margins. Risk management and price fluctuations. Of course, you can hedge if you want. But the major driver is the copper, the cost of the copper. So for as long as you are located very close to the source of the major raw material, then you can recoup some of the losses that you encounter as you export. Because transporting the copper over a few kilometers will be to the advantage of the manufacturer that is close to the source of the raw material, which is copper. Can the slide be moved, please? Yeah, so target customers. You have wholesalers, that is, if you are producing yourself, okay? Or even if you are retailing, you can be a wholesaler yourself. So the products are brought into your warehouse and you can start to distribute to the various retailers and contractors. Now, there are times when you land a huge contract, especially if your product is approved. where maybe government would be running projects. They will ask you to wire or supply the building wire for the hospitals, for the clinics, for the schools, and various other facilities. Okay, this is the customer base, and this may not just be local; it can even extend to the neighboring countries. Yeah. Next slide, please. Now, phase 2. How do we transition? Okay. In phase 2, we have tested the waters. Okay. We have rubbed shoulders with the big boys. We know what it takes. Now we want to put up our own plants. So, number 1, where are we going to locate that plant? Of course, near where the raw material is available in abundance. So you are talking in Zambia, very close to the copper belt, where the mining industries are. Of course, now the mines are moving even to the northwestern province, but the copper can be moved over some distance of, say, 300 kilometers onto the copper belt if the plant is set up on the copper belt. Machinery, or rather, before I go to the machinery, it depends. Do we want to start by producing copper rod, that is from the copper cathode to the copper rod, and then we take it down to the other processes? Or do we want to purchase copper rod and process it further? I'm talking about 2 issues here, because starting with the cathode means that you have to invest in a casting plant. But if you want to bypass the casting plant, then you just have to go straight into production of wire by purchasing already produced copper rod. And then from there, you break down the copper rod in various sizes. After breaking it down, you take it into intermediate machines. Then you go to mount wire machines. Then you strand the product. After stranding, you insulate. After insulating, you test the product for conformance. That is basically, in brief, the process. Now, various machines are on the market. The cheaper machines of this technology that we are talking about, of course, are found in China. You can procure the same machines in other countries like Europe, the USA. Yeah. If you want, you can purchase new machines. If you want, you can purchase second-hand or used machines and just use China to leverage, because, yeah, these machines can be very expensive. For instance, you find that if you buy a Nokia wire drawing machine or rod breaker from Germany, the equivalent, if purchased from China, will probably be a third of that cost. But it will achieve the same purpose. The materials have belabored the importance of copper to the wire and cable industry. Yeah, but the other raw materials are plastics, okay, to a smaller extent. But as we migrate further into bigger products, then you still galvanize, you need galvanized steel wires, you need tapes, measuring equipment of all types. You need equipment to load compound in hoppers. You need a lot of measuring tools for the operators to check the conformance of the products in terms of quality. So basically, those would be the major raw materials that you would need. Compliance and quality standards, I've already talked about it. ZABS, Zambia Bureau of Standards, would have to approve the product. But of course, the product can also be made to meet other specifications within the region. One of them is the SABS mark, the South African. It is normally issued by the South African Bureau of Standards. Now, the other way you can consolidate your position in terms of quality is to enlist one of the quality management systems, either the ISO 9001 quality management system, coupled with the safety standard, the ISO 18001. I think it has been upgraded now. And also the environmental standard. In some cases, instead of running these as separate standards, some institutions have chosen to merge them and call it an integrated management system. Now, financial planning and facility setup. We would need the gurus from finance to come on board. Equally exploring the funding, grants, investors, and the loans. Like I said, this would have to be a teamwork. The gurus in marketing, because we have to estimate how much of the product we would target, and that will determine the type of equipment that you need to purchase and put up. Okay? Now, you know, installation of equipment, of course, comes with its own challenges. You have to plan in such a way that you have enough money to purchase the equipment. Secondly, you've got to have enough money to install the equipment. After installation, you have to fly in the engineers that have to come and commission. And after commissioning, you go into running the prototype, the products as prototypes. And upon approval, depending on which quality standard or which market you are targeting, upon approval, that's when you can expand. And this would have to be done in parallel with the training of those that will run such equipment and training those that will maintain such equipment. This and the selection of where you are putting up the plant has to be backed up by the energy considerations. You need power to run a factory. You need water to run such a factory. So these considerations must be explored within the strategy. You need very good road networks so that you can bring in your raw materials and you can move your products to the various clients, locally as well as externally. I think, hey, that was a mouthful, eh? And time is flying. Already done almost an hour. Fine. Which is the next slide, ma'am? Where are we now? Okay. I seem to jump the gun. Okay. I talked about yeah, I talked about the raw materials being copper. This can be sourced from within for as long as the plant is located close to where the copper is being produced. It's just that currently, all the copper that is being produced is contractual. So you have to enter into a contract either with Mopani, you have to enter into a contract with the KCM or Kansanshi, depending on the volumes that you want to move. Whether it's per annum, and then break that down to monthly. And of course, there are some other Chinese firms that have come up. Like just a few weeks ago, I was in Chingola at a plant run by Chinese. It's called the Chingola Copper Mines, I think. It is based in Nembula Fitula. So even there, you have to enter into a contract with the Chinese that are supplying that copper cathode. Now, the cathodes come in two types. It can be electro-refined, can be electro-worn. Yeah, so, but in terms of quality, if you base the copper cathode on the LME specification or the COMEX specification, then you find that they are one and the same. And the pricing is normally the current month minus 1. That's what will do be the ruling price. It is whatever is the average this month minus 1 month. That's how they cost the copper cathode. And like I said, the only advantage is that you are moving the copper just a few kilometers and it's within Zambia. And if it's on the copper belt, it's very close to the mine. So you don't incur huge costs in terms of transportation. So I've already talked about logistics. You can either subcontract, but energy and the workforce are very critical. Workforce critical in terms of driving quality. You see, the technology in the cable industry is very uniform and the same. Okay? But the major component that drives quality is the workforce, the HR. Your human resource must be very competent and they must rise to the challenge. They must buy into the vision of those that are putting up such facilities. Yeah. So the strategy should be driven in such a way that the objectives are cascaded down to all the layers within the workforce for them to appreciate what is going on and happening. I think I'm done, unless there are questions to pick.
Okay. On the, I don't know, this is the last slide on the export opportunities, innovation coating. I think you touched on it, the East Coast. Is it the East Coast or Eastern?
African market.
Yeah. How big is the export market?
It's fairly big. if you are talking about a niche, but also, that region, because of the cost, because of the port of Mombasa, because of the port of Dar es Salaam, they bring in a lot of cable from China. So the competition is stiff. But if the quality is good and you are able to have the product approved by Tanzania Bureau of Standards or Kenya Bureau of Standards, then you are good to go. And like I said, there is also potential for a market in Uganda. There is also a potential of market in Ethiopia. But Ethiopia, you have to navigate the shipments because, inland movement is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
Because it means that you go through Tanzania, then Kenya, then, after Kenya, a bit of Sudan, then go into Ethiopia. But if you go via the Indian Ocean to Asmara or something, it's cheaper. And that's the preferred route. I don't know how the situation is with the pirate guys there. If that has improved, then it would be a potential market.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you so much, Vasiniza. I will open it for questions. And I mean, Africa as a whole, this Africa Continental Free Trade Area, that one has not yet been developed, but other countries are taking advantage of that. I think that will open things up. The politics, what is happening here in North America, could be good for Africa to start looking inwards. I think I see that also as an opportunity. And furthermore, to the Zambian cry that we do not benefit from this resource. It makes 70% of our GDP, and yet it only contributes about 10%. In my view, we, the owners of the land, have not taken advantage to say how can we make this product work for us. But we have given these jobs, like you are saying, to the Chinese. Someone in the chat has shared from Thailand. I don't even know if Thailand has a mine, but they manufacture all these wires. So we are trying as a cooperative to see how we can fit into this space. Let's open for questions. Thank you so much, Vasiniza, for that. Just a question anyway.
Most welcome, sir. Yeah.
Yes, before others come in. The LME, that is the London Metal Exchange. I see this is the battle they're having in Nigeria, whether to sell the oil in the Naira or quoted at the stock market. Do you think there is a way, a cooperative like ourselves, we can lobby to have some of these products which we are going to buy locally at a local pricing, rather than following what is on the Lusaka on the London stock on the London Metal Exchange?
Of course, if say you are operating within Zambia, you want to buy copper rod, they may quote it in dollar, but you have to pay maybe the kwacha equivalent. That's the thing. But that would depend on LME. The driver for copper is LME. And even you are going to quote the product in dollar, then you you convert to kwacha so that you don't lose out.
Mhm.
And this is not to say there's no way. Where there are discussions, I'm sure a solution can be found.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. If you were to lobby,
correct.
a solution would be found.
Correct. Correct.
But maybe that question would be best answered by the regulators.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
those that regulate the pricing and what have you.
All right. Okay. Questions. Let's see who has a question.
Chair, there are two questions in the chat. There's
Okay.
one. There's one saying, "Evening. What's ZAB's new name?" And then the second one is, "What is the projected outlay for the whole project to get off the ground, all things considered?" Those are the two questions in the chat.
Can I, anyway, you want to answer those questions and then I can ask a question?
Let Masini's answer that and then you can come.
Let me start by saying, when we talk of ZABs, I know that recently they changed it to some authority because they've incorporated, I think, the weights and measures to that unit. But it used to be called Zambia Bureau of Standards. It was basically set up to protect the interests of consumers or clients, so that clients are not subject to inferior quality of products. Now, in cable, this is very paramount, because if you bring in some defective item and you wire a house, a school, a hospital, you know the consequences. It will burn down, destroy property, and you could even have loss of life. So in order to protect clients from such dangers, the Bureau of Standards has been mandated to be able to approve all cable products that come into Zambia. That is the ZABS, Zambia Bureau of Standards, or they changed name to an agency, as it were. Now, in terms of outlay, project outlay, we talked of two phases. There is the first phase where you are looking at warehousing, where you purchase already finished product, okay? And then you start to distribute the finished product. So in terms of timelines, that would depend on the availability of funds, number one. Two, on the availability of warehousing facilities, okay? Once this is established, the market apparently, for now, I would say it's already there. You just have to offload your requirements on Zamefa or Neocant, and they will move the building wire. I'm sure they have more space and they make good money out of those lines for building wire. So it's a question of just approaching them if we have warehousing facilities. And so when we talk about outlay and timelines, what will determine this is the availability of funds and the warehousing facilities. The facilities may not be much, because the other thing will be you probably need coilers and length counters, because suppose a client does not want 100 meters, they probably want 10, 20, 30. You have to rewind that and cut. Okay, that's in the first phase. But in the second phase, there we need the timelines that must match the needs, because we are talking, like I said, you have to fragment phase 2. you've got to find quotations for the equipment needed, depending on the products that we want to run. After which, when these are found and you are satisfied with the quotation, then you get your funding. If you've got your funding in place, you buy the equipment. The equipment is shipped. Of course, timelines will be given. They will normally come by sea. It's the most cheap and convenient way. And then you've got to have drawings of where they will be installed and how they will be installed. And within this timeline, you would have created a conducive environment for your provision of energy, water, and what have you, the necessary infrastructure that goes with the type of equipment needed. Okay? So you would give a timeline depending on some of the things I've talked about. And this timeline should also incorporate the fact that once the equipment is installed, you bring in the commissioning engineers. They commission and hand over equipment. Then you run the prototype products and offload them on ZABS. Once ZABS gives the certification and they clear the products, you are good to go.
Okay. Brother Ways, and then Ms. Martha has a question. Will Globo need to set up new business entity under which to conduct? That is not for Masiniza, but for us to decide as a cooperative, as a cooperative, whether we want to run this as a cooperative or create a vehicle, a company which can run this. That's a good question. Brother Ways.
Yeah, I'm just curious in terms of the competitiveness of like the pricing for a copper. Let's say for those that want to, and I'm talking about the wires, you know, for those that want to say to export to, you know, to markets outside, maybe even outside Africa, like how is our pricing competitive enough for us to be able to, you know, to supply to, you know, to like you know, to Asia. You know, I live in Asia, and the reason I googled you know, that company is because next week I'll be in Bangkok, and I was just curious like to see, you know, what kind of companies they have. I know that Thailand doesn't have copper and China doesn't have copper, but yet, you know, these products are coming from, you know, from China and going to Zambia.
Yeah, it's mainly coming from Zambia and the Congo nearby here.
Okay, yeah. So how competitive in terms of like pricing? Like, let's say someone wants to sell to China, like is that feasible in Asia or anywhere? Like, is it feasible? Like, is it something that, you know, who are you competing against? You know what I mean?
You are basically competing with the big boys on the market that are using copper rod. If I got your question right, you are talking about exporting copper rod, meaning you have already converted the copper cathode into copper wire, which is referred to as redraw rod, if it's going to go into a cable manufacturing company.
Correct.
So your competition would be the big guys, like Grenco would buy huge tons of copper, which they put in their warehouses, and then they sell to whichever market they want. So you might have to compete with those big guys and other speculators. But if you add a way, you can get hold of Zamefa. I would find the contacts for you, the sales and marketing guys, or now you can approach them and ask in what form you want your copper, And what you do with it once you have purchased it is your baby. Where you take it, that is purely up to you.
What is the advantage
Have
of
I
buying
answered
from...
that question?
Yes, you have.
What's the
Thank you.
advantage of buying from Zamefa?
The advantage of buying from Zamefa, I'll be very brief, is the quality, number one. Two, the distance. You gain in terms of distance. So you have the quality, assured of the quality. And two, you know, if you are buying, if your warehousing facility is within, then you have a huge advantage compared to someone who's far away, because you have to insure your goods there, and as you move them over such long distances, it's you who absorb that cost. But nearby, we are talking about 50 km from Kitwe to Luansha, or you are talking about 90 kilometers from Mufrila to Luansha, or 40 km from Mufrila to Kitwe. You are talking about 300 kilometers roughly from Kansanshi into the copper belt, depending on where your warehousing facility is. Those would be your two advantages. Quality. Zambia is known for its high copper quality. I've been put on the spot in one place. Like one time I was thrown into the deep end of the pool in India, and they asked me the same questions. And I told them, Zambia is known for its good copper rod quality. And they told me, no ways. Why do we have a problem with your copper? I said, wait a minute, I'll show you how it is processed. And after showing them, a week later, they were satisfied. And they let me come back to Zambia. Yeah, so quality is important.
Is there like a portfolio, like this is from Sister Clotilda? Is there like a portfolio? It has gone up, someone here. Is there like a portfolio with figures, infrastructure, estimated sales profit? Do you have any numbers we can work from, Vasinita, which has already been done?
Yeah, I think I would have to, I've got some numbers, except not the current numbers. Okay, but I have to go back maybe 2 to 3 years in time and dig out that information. But for now, I would limit it to building wire, if you don't mind, for now.
Okay.
When I talk of building wire, I'm referring to the products that I alluded to, including the one that you saw in that small video. Yeah, so I would have to dig out that and share it with the team.
Okay, okay. Yeah, that would be very helpful. Miss Catherine here says, one of my concerns is that there are a lot of aspects that would be outside our control, e.g. water resources, road facility. I remember when Mulungushi Textile opened, the water supply in Kawe was adversely affected. Already the water supply in Zambia these days is very poor generally. How would we circumvent this problem and ensure a constant supply of water and even electricity to power the plant?
Yeah, there are service providers to that effect. Okay, let me start with water. If the power facility, utilities seem to have a challenge, you've got to sink some boreholes in the facility to mitigate that shortfall.
Mhm.
And in terms of power, you would have to either put up gensets, okay, or solar energy for emergency purposes only, such that if you lose power, you can have at least minimum lighting for people to navigate their way in their plant. But you would have to run the critical machines using gensets. Those are some of the options I would think of just off the cuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. Mgara here has some comments he wants to make. Go ahead, Brother Gabit.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Vasinyinza. Very informative presentation. My first comment would be that there are two ways to get into this business: at the copper road, which is get the finished road from Zamefa and run with it, or you enter in at the mining, processing the copper. And I think from just the word go, copper, processing the copper first would not be the best thing for us. That's just, that's an infrastructure, that's a business by itself. So I think it's a lot easier to make an entry at the point where you get the road and process the road and get the finished product. I also agree with the fact that it's a lot easier to start with the wiring cables. There are many different products for which copper is used, and on a world scale, you'll be surprised that even big companies run into problems where they can't source their copper. I mean, I work for an engineering firm where a well-established supplier comes up and just says, hey guys, I think in 2 years' time we'll not be supplying you with this kind of copper. They are devoting like half of their factory space to processing copper for the EV industry. And whereas you'd think 2 years is a long time, it's not, it's a short time to find another stable supplier. And in cases like that, I always cry why we can't do it in Zambia, because that's a raw product that we have, you know. So, but I think a long-term view is essential in this case. We generally look for, you know, quick profits in a short period of time.
6 weeks.
Yeah,
6 weeks.
but I think one, this is a copper product which we produce in Zambia. Two, we have the chance to add value to it. Okay, there are many costs, there are all those things that have to be considered. You don't go in blindly. But in the long term, this would be a very viable project where, you know, if you just consider that you are doing domestic or wiring cable, then there are industrial copper, for instance, which is insulated enamel copper wire. That is a business by itself. But those are things that you would keep on the horizon and say, if this stage is done, we can move to this next stage. We can move to this next stage, you know. A good example, there is a company in Mexico, Monterrey. I think it's called Magnecon. And you would see that this company was started in 1954. Very small copper-based producing company. And today, 50 years later, it's actually run, it's a private firm and it's run by the third generation now. And they are into all sorts of copper products, you know, starting from the wiring all the way to the industrial copper, So I think a long-term view is essential, and this can work. I mean, here we should be looking at our second, third generation ever Kalachta running this thing. But if we say no, we must eat today, then it will just die there and then.
Yeah.
All right, that's all right.
Yeah, no, that's a critical a point you make. If we have to do this as a cooperative, the mindset we probably need to have is either our kids or our grandchildren. We will not sit and start complaining about copper the way we complain about copper today. We would have set the infrastructure, everything is working, and they will say, here lies granddad, here lies grandmom. They left something for us. So long-term view, ladies and gentlemen, is very, very critical. We are behind because everything we want to do is short-term. I have to have within 12 months, I need to have the returns. Do we have any more questions? From there, we are going to move this discussion in the projects team. They will look at the presentation. Sinyenza will be in touch to help us with some of the aspects as we put together this project proposal to see if it's viable. But like someone has just said, we have abundance of copper. And if the people in China are buying it to go and produce the wire rod in China and then bring it back to Zambia, what about we who are already in Zambia? We can definitely find a way. Before I give you Asiniza for last word, any other question? I don't see any hand going up. Okay. Last word, Asiniza, and then we will conclude.
Yeah, I just want to thank the Globo cooperative members out there for their trust and support. And yes, I'll be in touch. Whenever you feel like asking, there are no foolish questions. We just share knowledge and ideas. Just bring it on, and I'll share what I know best. And if I need to be corrected in any matter, your comments will be welcome. I like the thoughts of Dr. Mugala. It's like he's been reading my mind all along. Whatever is put across is what I've always thought whenever I sit down to just reflect on what legacy I would have left, having spent so much time, in the copper industry. It's close to 3 decades. Will it just die in vain, or what will I be remembered for? And so these questions keep coming. And when I share information like this, I feel so elated. And so I just want to thank you, and thank you for organizing such a meeting. I give you all the kudos. Kudos to the team. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Asiniza, and safe travel back to Luansha. To the members of the cooperative, we shall be reporting back on the analysis we are going to start to do with the projects team and see where we go from now. Don't forget, at the end of this next month, we have our annual general meeting. You've been, I think, good members. We've been together for the last 3 years. We've reached a membership of about 260 members and a portfolio of over 20 million kwacha in the bonds. But now we are thinking about wanting to diversify, and this is where we are going to these various projects, discovery, so to say. There is no project out there which has no risks, as you can tell. Even the bonds, we are facing the kwacha, but since we say that is not our main goal is to go into something which can multiply our money. So we shouldn't be very worried about the currency exchange, because our future view, 10 years from today, 15, 20 years from now, it is what we are talking about today. Begin to control the resource of our nation as a cooperative, as a people. Thank you, everyone. If we don't have any questions, have a good Saturday, and we'll be in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Problems there. We're vying for his interest, vying for his love.
Are you ready for it?
Yes, it's a recording. I don't know if that's a question. I'll process the video and I'll share.
Thank you so much, Rogers.
Thank you, Asimiza. Thank you so much.
Great.
Okay,
boss.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
No,